What if I told you that there's an at-home test that can predict your longevity and the health of your longevity? Not only how long you'll live and how well you'll live, but it can also predict whether or not you'll get dementia and even cardiovascular disease. And here's the other thing. It takes less than 2 minutes. So my friend Fred is back again. He's going to ask some questions on how to perform the test, how to interpret it, and a little bit of information about, maybe a lot of information about, how does this actually work? So then at the end of the video, we're going to have a showdown. Any comments, Fred? Questions?
I have lots of questions. Are you ready?
I guess so. I'll do my best.
Well, here's really where I'd like to start. I mean, I've been in the wellness business for 40 years. I've been to every conceivable kind of doctor, MDs, naturopaths, chiropractors, functional medicine, and nobody has ever tested my grip strength. And so I guess my first question to you, where did you come up with that this was a indicator for metabolic health?
Well, that's a really good point. Let me ask you this. How many times did somebody test your glucose in terms of getting a oral glucose tolerance test or your insulin?
Yeah, 0.
That's a good point. There's a lot of new things going on in terms of understanding our longevity. Grip strength is something that's been around forever. Oral glucose tolerance test, as you know, has been around for decades. And that's what's really changed here recently. It's just been over the past decade or so, even less than that, 5 years, that we've begun to connect the dots between things like grip strength and glucose response to healthy longevity. Now, grip strength refers to the force exerted by muscles in the hands and the forearm. It's a reliable indicator of overall muscle strength and function. Beyond its role in facilitating daily tasks like opening jars or carrying groceries, it's become recognized much more recently as an indicator of a robust marker of healthy outcomes.
So are there different ways to do it, or is there one sort of standard recommended way?
So these things are simple and easy. You're looking at yours. Hold it so that we can see it. We'll go a little bit deeper into how to set that up when we get closer to the showdown. First of all, why don't we talk a little bit more about why we know, why the science is developing in this space. So first, about all-cause mortality, death rates. One study with over 1.9 million, almost 2 million people in it, that looked at grip strength and overall mortality. Guess what? People with better grip strength, 31% reduction in all-cause mortality. Now, that's a really big number. And one thing that you might be surprised to know is that most things on cardiovascular risk alone, like statins and even some of the weight loss components, don't show big impacts on overall mortality. Grip strength does. The reason for that is cardiovascular disease, even though it's the most important or the number one cause of death, it still causes only a third of deaths, have a significant all-cause mortality impact. If it's just cardiovascular disease, it's got to have 3 times that impact to show for all cause. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess what you're saying is it's a real significant factor. I really kind of struggle to understand why. Can you sort of explain what is that connection? I mean, is it a really good measure of muscle mass, and that's a big factor? Is it a good measure of your overall strength? And I mean, what do you think that connection is to all-risk mortality?
When you look through the science, you look through the evidence, you look through people's opinions, authors' opinions as they're trying to explain this, you hear each of those things that you brought up. Number one, it's a good proxy for overall muscle mass. And we know muscle mass is very protective, not only of prediabetes and diabetes, metabolic disease, but it's also very helpful to avoid trips and falls, which are a big deal as we get older.
Isn't it a very large percentage of how even end of life comes about?
Absolutely.
My mother, who died at the age of 96 recently, had 2 broken hips and 2 broken pelvis in the last 2 years of her life.
Yep. So I don't remember the exact number, but once you fall and break a hip or fall and break a pelvis, the probability of dying over the next year or two just skyrockets.
Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, I presume to some degree, for many people, it makes you bedridden, and now it's all downhill, right?
Yeah. So another thing that you'll see trending right now on YouTube is discussion of leg strength and why it's so important to longevity. Well, most folks say, and I agree, it's a good proxy for leg strength, but I think it's a lot more. And most folks say that too. If you look at cardiovascular risk, there's more than one study and meta-analyses indicating people with good grip strength have decreased risk of cardiovascular disease. And then you get into cognitive function.
So how does more muscles improve cognitive function?
The best anybody could give you is a guess on that. I think that it actually does impact it. I mean, you're a PhD level psychologist. You know that you know what a homunculus is, right?
Well, don't accuse me of that, but yeah.
I suspect there may be something there. Whether there is or not, you got to step back and think about something. It's like at the end of the day, we find that it's only a proxy, only a bioindicator. Do you still not want to keep that in shape?
I mean, will you define what a proxy is?
So, well, let me just say a passive bioindicator.
Okay.
So let's say that we go through all of this work. Let's say that I work, by the way, on my grip strength, and I'll show you a couple of ways to do it, or we'll talk about a couple of ways to do it. There are folks who would say, well, maybe that's not going to do you any good because maybe it's really just a passive bioindicator. From my perspective, I work on my grip strength. I find that it helps me in terms of just activities of daily life. I find that I feel better. So from my perspective, I'll take that risk. I'll take that risk that I've maybe wasted some time in terms of overall longevity. I don't think I have.
Well, here's just another question. I'm turning 74. I'm thin. I never was able to build a lot of muscle, even when I worked at it. And I notice how much harder it is to do now. But can you just describe a little bit about how aging affects the ability to build muscle? Because if you're saying that this is such a big deal, particularly in your legs, and it's reflected in a hand grip strength, I guess I want to get a realistic perspective on what's attainable, because it just seems so much harder to do.
It is harder to do. You know what? Growing old's not for sissies, Fred, is it?
You've told me that before, and I guess I'm a sissy.
No, you're not. A couple of things I will tell you. A lot of folks get focused on protein, for example, and there's no question. The amount of protein that you're supposed to get was originally developed using young males, and people react about that. And why do they react about it? Because young males have so much testosterone going that they're going to have a major leg up in terms of creating and maintaining muscle. You and I are no longer young males. We don't have that leg up that we had when we were younger. But even if you're a female, male, older male, you still have the ability to build strength. There's no question about that. It just takes longer. It takes more discipline. They talk about getting good protein. As you work through a diet and maintain a proper diet, sometimes it can be a challenge to get enough protein as we get older. When I look at patients overall, I really don't see the dietary challenges as the big challenges for building muscle. Guess what I actually see as the biggest, most common challenge for building muscle for old people?
They don't work hard enough at it?
Yeah, no question.
Recognizing it's going to be harder, you might say to a person my age, you got to put more time into strengthening exercises than you did when you're 40.
Yes.
Is that what you recommend?
There's no question. And we haven't touched on one of the most important components yet either. Maybe when you're in your 40s, and especially 30s or 20s, you can say, okay, I'm going to dress up and drive across town to the gym twice, 3 times a week, even once a week, and maintain a lot of muscle. You and I are not going to do that. We're just not going to maintain muscle, and clearly not build muscle, if we're depending on doing this once or twice a week. You and I have talked about what we call exercise snacks. I've already done several exercise snacks this morning. I've done pull-ups. I've done push-ups, diamond push-ups, broad-based push-ups. I've done these one-legged squats on the stairwell. I've done one-legged calf raises, each calf. Again, just getting up in the morning. First thing in the morning, go in and do some exercises.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, when you say that's the biggest hurdle you see in the patients you treat, I mean, I guess you can certainly see at the age of 74, you're not so excited about going to the gym and doing that all day long, right?
Not at all.
And it's sort of like somewhat discouraging because you don't see the results as quick. I know you've talked about this a lot. You're saying it again. I mean, this is a pretty big deal to be able to stress as, this whole baby boomer generation. And for everybody's aging, but the longer you go to recognize that, which your inclination would be to reduce, I would say most people kind of think, do you think that's almost more important than cardio exercise?
There's a very good case to be made for that. Good crossover design, looking at mitochondria in the muscles. They actually did. It was Mayo Clinic, over a decade ago, and they did a crossover design. This study actually talks to two of the things that we're talking about. One is the impact of aging and the opportunity during aging. And the other is what's the best type of workout. So they did aerobics, they did resistance training, and they did high intensity interval training. They also had groups that were in their 30-somethings, 50-somethings, and 70 and 80-somethings. Most people would have thought that aerobics would be the winner. That was the standard 10, 20 years ago when they did this study. What they actually found was, in terms of building mitochondria, as proven by actual muscle biopsy, far the number 1 and 2. Number 1 was, you know what it was?
I'm going to guess HIIT.
It was HIIT. Number 1 was HIIT. A fairly close number 2 was what? Strength training, resistance training.
Cardio was last.
Cardio was a way back there last. And when you think about it, cardio is a gentle push on your muscles. It's not starving those muscles for oxygen like HIIT training. It's not really stressing those muscles in terms of strength because it's a very gentle movement. So it's not really stressing those muscles either way. The way to get an impact out of those muscles is to stress them. One way is by oxygen deprivation, and that's what you're getting with HIIT. The other way is strength, stressing the strength, and that's what you're getting with resistance training.
So it's all about stressing the muscles, either way you do it.
All about that. Now, and it makes sense because muscles are so important for our metabolic health. And when you start thinking about metabolic health being so important to things like cognition, then you start realizing and thinking, there's not that far of a leap to say something that looks at overall muscle conditioning is also going to tell us about metabolic health.
This is so unknown and so little talked about.
It is. You remember I said that study also told us a little bit about aging and working out, that Mayo crossover study with the muscle biopsies. Guess who got the biggest improvement in mitochondrial function?
You talking about age groups?
Was it the 20 and 30-somethings, the 50-somethings, or the 70 and 80-somethings?
I think you're setting me up, but I think it's the oldest.
Yeah, I'm not so good at trying to mask when I set you up. Obviously, I was. But
that's okay. I need to be tipped off to give the right answers.
Doesn't that make a big difference in terms of the conversation we were having a few minutes ago? How difficult it is, how growing old is not for sissies. How are we going to get there? I'm 70. Is it too late for me? Boomers having problems? No, it's never too late. I mean, that's one of the major things that comes out of that study, and that is we can respond. Our muscles will respond. It's just that we don't have the testosterone boost that we had 50 years ago. You just got to do the work.
How do you get the word out on this? If this is such a big deal, it's never being talked about. Very rare. You're one of the few people that do. So what's the state of the union with physicians in terms of even knowing that this is a factor?
To actually go back and answer that question, number one, you started off with an interesting fact. You're in your mid-70s. You've spent a lot of time in the prevention world, the preventive medicine world. You've spent a lot of time in the health coaching world. You've seen a lot of docs for prevention and health coaching. Never, ever had somebody do a grip strength.
Or even talk about the topic of muscle strength.
Let's look at this from a different way. Let's look at something that I mentioned and we talk about a lot. Very, very straight up medicine. One of the most common things that doctors need to diagnose, prediabetes. Do you know what portion of doctors know how to diagnose prediabetes?
Only because I've heard you before. It's pathetic. Yeah.
25%. And we're not talking about orthopedists or surgeons here, the guys that don't do that for a living. We're talking about family practitioners, internists, even cardiologists, the guys that are supposed to be looking at this for a living. And they're not looking at that either. You have to wonder, what in the heck are they doing? They're refilling blood pressure medications. And the cardiologists are doing stress tests and stents. So that's where we are.
Yeah.
And it creates that's what creates the need. And that's what creates the demand on places like, the social media. I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce you to my Metabolic at-home risk program. This is a real game changer for anyone thinking about your metabolic health and your longevity. And it's priced at just $169.50. So it's an incredible value compared to other programs that cost 3 times as much. And you can find links below to a special limited time promotional code. Plus, I've included a lot more information at the end of this video. Just last week, hundreds of other viewers invested in their health with this kit. Why not join them on their journey to a healthier and more fulfilling life? Now, back to the show.
So before we do our contest here, what can you do to improve your grip strength? Do you recommend actually doing grip strength exercises like you talked about a few minutes ago? Or is it really just do an overall type of strengthening routine?
No, I actually do actual grip strength. I don't know if you remember, I was the medical director for Toyota North America for a decade. And the reason I bring that up is that's over-the-shoulder upper extremity work, automobile assembly. So I ended up seeing a whole lot of people that had upper extremity problems and learned a whole lot about hand and grip therapy. There is a go-to grip strength trainer, and I use it. It's called Dog Bones.
Interesting name.
It is an interesting name. And it's named after a little bar. Unfortunately, as I mentioned to you, I can't get to my dog bone right now, but you can get them on Amazon. You can build them. I've got one at my mom's house that I just built with a broomstick. So what you do is you get a length of bar, like a broomstick. You get a weight. It's best to get a twine or rope that's about 6 feet long. Put a carabiner on the end, so you're pulling the weight up, and tie and tape the weight around the bar, and you're pulling the weight up doing that.
I broke my wrist a few years ago, and they had a device that I did that on. That's a grip strengthener?
It is, because as you'll notice at first where you're getting the burn is up in here. You'll feel some up in here as well.
What do you think about, I've got one of those, those tension, I could go get it. Are those any good?
They're not bad, but like I said before, I was in one of the best places in the world for just working on upper extremity stuff. And the dog bone was clearly our go-to. We did have some people using grip strength things, but On a related item, you know, high blood pressure is very much related to metabolic disease. There's some evidence that shows if you just do some grip strength with that little spring thing you're talking about, just that and some isometric work, do that for a minute or two, and you'll actually get some decrease in your blood pressure.
Isometric work like other parts of the body?
Just squeezing that thing with your grip.
With that.
With grip only, not other parts of your body even. So again, there's too many different snippets of information which I think indicate that this is really more than just a window, a passive bioindicator. I think there's something more to it than that.
So before you die, Dr. Brewer, I want you to prove that out.
Well, that would be neat.
You'll win the Nobel Prize for that.
Well, if I do, I'll take you to Stockholm with me for the acceptance speech. How's that?
Let's do it in the summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You ready to start learning how to do this? There you go. Okay.
I gotta turn it on first.
Well, but first of all, you haven't set up your machine, have you?
Yeah.
Turn it on. Are you user number 1?
I am.
Okay. Did you put your age in there?
Yes.
Okay. Is your little 1 flashing? Are you ready?
I got to hit start, don't I?
Yep. Hit start and squeeze.
How do you want me to do this right here?
You can stand, you can do your arm, your elbow like that, or you can do straight out. Oh my goodness. I only got to 76. Hey, that's good, Fred.
Okay, let me do it. How long do I squeeze?
You squeeze this just a few seconds is the highest you can get.
Yeah. Oh, it didn't. Hold on, what's going on? Here we go. Okay. So I'm 37.
Oh, yours is probably kilograms.
Oh, kilograms. Are you going to convert that for me?
Yeah, let's convert it real quick. 37 point what?
37.1.
81. There you go. I can't believe it.
Did I beat you?
I think you did, Fred.
Oh my gosh. See,
I didn't expect that.
Well, you know what? You did a bunch of exercise this morning. Maybe that's worn you out.
Maybe it did. Maybe you got better grip strength than you thought.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. Is there an age thing?
Yes, it changes significantly by age.
Am I classified just a little worse than strong?
I know you did a lot of athletics. I know you played a lot of basketball, and you've done a lot of athletics with your family. You don't have to have the biggest muscles to have the strongest muscles. Basketball players are older ones like Michael Jordan were really good examples of that. Very thin, but also very strong. So for a 70 to 99, strong is 77 pounds or greater.
I'm there.
You're there already. For 65 to 69, my group, I've got to get up to 97 pounds to hit strong. And I'm just not there yet.
I'm surprised.
I hit high 80s several times, but haven't hit 90 yet.
I got to tell all my kids I'm stronger than what I look.
You are. I'm not surprised. So, enough of me being a silly old man. Let's talk about grip strength and how you interpret the results. Really, it's weak, average, or strong. And yes, I hate to admit it, I was average, Fred's was strong. So, if you're sitting there thinking, well, okay, I'm not weak. The weak may be for the frail older people. That's one potential explanation of what we see with the evidence, but there's another one as well. It's called dose-response curve, meaning the better your grip strength, the better your prediction of long-term health. In fact, if you have an average grip strength, it still carries a 42% higher risk of early disability and death. So here's the key point. If you're in your 20s or 30s and you have a weak grip strength, you've got over a 50%, 53% to be exact, higher risk of having disability and early death. If you're in your 60s, I'm 67, and I have a weak grip strength, it's far worse. 83% probability of early disability and or death. So what's the takeaway? The only safe zone for grip strength is the strong zone. Not average, certainly not weak, strong. So I've mentioned a few times dog bones, and I've actually even showed a couple of shots on it on a couple of our videos. Now this is one that I bought on Amazon. I've got another one in Spartanburg that's just made out of an old broom handle. I cut the end of it off. I tied a piece of nylon twine around it, taped it up. And here's what you do. This has a nice vinyl ribbon. Again, as I said, I've got twine at the other one. And then you attach weights to the bottom. Don't start with this much weight. This is like, what, 18 pounds. I would start with 5 pounds, unless you already know that you've got major grip strength. So what you do is you hold it out and you start rolling it up. And you roll it up till you get to the top. And then you roll it down till you get to the bottom. Now some people just let it slide back down, and I'll show that in just a minute, because they say, you know what, you really just want to get the flexion component. And there's something to be said for that, but when you look at muscle training physiology, what we call eccentric, or going from shortened to, or flexed to longer, actually provides some good training. Anyhow, that's probably too deep, but the people that just do the flexion part do it like that. So again, that is a dog bone when you hear me refer to that in the future, which I will, because I'm going to be working on my grip strength a lot. I created the video that you just watched because I have a passion about educating and empowering people like you to take charge of your health. It's the same reason why I created our metabolic risk assessment. This at-home assessment kit contains everything you need to work with one of our coaches to understand the details. It gives you a comprehensive picture and details of your metabolic health status. Using this information and the report that we develop, you'll spend an hour with one of our health coaches to understand your own unique metabolic needs and strengths. Now, all of this equipment is high quality. It's not throwaway stuff. You'll continue to use this for assessments and training during your metabolic health journey. And here's all the information that your coach will review with you from the report. Retail labs and online services charge over $500 for this. And here's the other thing. Those other tests don't even include the most important components, like the oral glucose tolerance test or the grip test. My at-home metabolic risk kit only costs $169.50. Yes, that's right, $169.50, less than $200. If you want to help a family member or friend, you can get an additional box. It's just $119.99. Our goal is to train and help 500 people just this month. We're well on our way. Let's hope one of those is you. Use the link below to start your metabolic health journey now. If you'd like to find out more about how to improve your lifestyle and clean your arteries, click on this right here.